Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh,
Thank
smooth.
you very much for coming. We have the one and only James Harding joining us in the studio this
Welcome,
evening.
James.
Yeah, welcome, mate.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you for joining
coming.
us.
It only
Finally.
took 49 episodes. You guys are
Finally got you.
And a few like missed schedules, like
Yeah, that's true too.
Saving, best to last. Definitely not scraping the barrel at all.
This is the last
thank
one,
you.
is it?
No. Oh,
could be.
just good. It's out. The cat's out and back. Last
Depending
one
how
ever.
well today goes.
Depends if we get cancelled or not. So, thank you very much for coming. So, we wanted to have you on. Obviously, we were speaking about at the beginning, mutual circles, mutual friends, and a little bit of business here and there in between us sometimes. So, do you want to just start off kind of telling us a little bit about your business, what you do, why you got into it, and a bit of the backstory?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I started Harding Property Law in 2022. At that point, I'd been a lawyer about 10 years and previous was working at a few different places, some small, some big law firms. And I've always been very entrepreneurial generally. And I've always had little side gigs, bits and pieces. And sort of that resonated really well, actually, Brody, with your podcast where you were talking about all the random things that you were doing.
Yeah.
And it was very similar to sort of a lot of the streaks that I was having while I was trying to still do my normal job.
Yeah.
And then what ended up happening was as I sort of got more senior in my career and was working in another place, I sort of was doing all these random side gigs and focusing on those instead of my actual job, my actual profession.
Yeah.
And then I thought, actually, hang on a minute, that's probably not what I should be focusing on. Like, what is it about my current job that I'm not enjoying that's making me focus on 3D printing or whatever it is, whatever hobby that I was trying to turn into an Etsy gig.
Yeah.
And then once I sort of worked out what those things were, I was like, right, it's time to make a change in my life and start something that's big.
Yeah.
And in 2 years, it's gone from just my wife and I, just in a small office on McLeod Street, and we just recently moved to a much bigger office.
Yeah.
It's 380 square meters, and as of next week, I've got 6 staff, including myself.
Jeez.
Gross, man.
Exploded.
So it's been like a wild journey, you know
Yeah.
what I mean, in the sense that like just scaling up. And to be honest, the whole thing is we've been on the run the whole time, right? From the moment we started, we had too much work for 2 people. Then we got a third. Then we had too much for 3.
Yeah.
And it just kept rolling like that until where we are now, which is, we got 6 people, but we still have too much.
Yeah.
So where does it end? I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, it has to end. Like,
I
you
guess we
can't
can
just-
work for you at some
Yeah.
point.
This is
guess
an
we-
interview.
I guess we can help you out
Yeah.
somehow.
Ben already works.
Yeah.
He's on retainer for music.
And says Brody's
And
on your
Brody's on retainer for
website.
website.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. So what was that point there in 2022 where you're like, okay, like this is it. You realize that you're not putting enough time into you're not putting enough time in your day job, but you're like this needs to be a focus somewhere else. What was that kind of line in the sand where you're like, all right, it's time to make the jump?
That's a really interesting question because I can't pinpoint something, specifically. What I do know is that getting up in the morning, going to work became just like a mundane sort of routine that I end up growing not to really enjoy.
Yeah.
And then obviously working in a much bigger firm, there's more people. There was a lot more sort of work to check and bits and pieces. So it wasn't so much on the tools as I am now.
Yeah.
But I was working similar hours. And I think that like the best way to sort of explain how it changed was like I was turning up to work at 7 and leaving at 6 most days or, give or take an hour. But the amount of actual productive time in that space is completely different to what it is now.
Yeah.
It would be very easy for me, like even today, I sit down at the computer desk at like 7 o'clock in the morning and barely leave that desk. Except my wife will force me to go get some Subway or try and get away from the screen for 1 second or off the phone for 1 second. But it'd be very easy for me every day to sit there for 10, 11 hours just solid, doing emails and answering phones and taking messages and doing all the things.
Yeah.
And all that is 100% billable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I feel like I'm doing the work three times the amount of work I was doing before in the same amount of time. Except this time I'm doing it for myself and doing it in the way that I think is the most productive way, the most efficient, and also like making those benefits flow onto the customers. And
Yeah.
the clients. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
It's the main people who are benefiting from me changing and working harder is the clients now, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty much on call. I get to people really quickly and look, I know it's conveyancing, it's buying, selling houses. It's not really changing the world. But at least people who are buying, selling houses, like it's a very stressful time for them, and I can try and make that as smooth as I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That does make a difference. I think it does give me a bit more purpose than I had before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In bigger law firms, you don't really have the mum and dad clients or the everyday people trying to get ahead. It's mostly, you know, medium to large business, governments, government departments, all those sorts of people who, yeah, they need legal work done, but they really don't care about the legal work. They're doing it because it has to be done.
Yeah.
They're not doing it because they want to buy the house and they want someone good to do it. You know,
Yeah.
I think that's the main sort of difference.
I was just going to say, when you started out with your business, did you really have the vision of where you wanted to take it? Like, obviously being at 6 people now, I guess there's so much room to continue growing. Is that something
I had
on the
no
horizon,
idea.
or-
All I knew is that I thought there was a bit of a gap in the market for the type of service that I would give people.
Yeah.
And the type of property law I sort of do and have become quite technical at is quite niche as well.
Yeah.
So there's not a huge amount of competitors in the market. There's a lot of if you try to go Cairns conveyancing on Google, there are a lot of competitors.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of those competitors are not in Cairns anymore. They're all online firms, or there might be bigger firms in Brisbane that have like a separate business they've called conveyancing something. Anything with the word conveyancing. You know what I mean? And none of them are local. No one answers the phone. They're all online only services. And they're usually a third of the price of what a typical fee would be from us or another, similar law firm.
Yeah.
And because there was this rise of these firms that are doing the same service, like the same A to B sort of service, but with zero, interaction, with zero personality, that made it like a significant gap in providing that sort of service. So just to answer the phone or return a call or talk someone through a contract became something that was unique to me for some reason.
That's crazy, hey.
Even though, and I'm sure there's law firms, if there's anyone watching, I'm sure there's a lot of good lawyers that do those same things, but not enough for the number of people buying and selling houses or trying to do a strata title or a subdivision or any of the number of random things that we do.
Yeah.
There's just so many transactions in Cairns or in Queensland for the number of lawyers.
Yeah.
And that problem will never get better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's just not enough graduates. Like, why are people not choosing law? Don't know. We can do a whole session on that. But as why are people not doing property law and conveyancing? I know that. You know what I mean? It's just, it's not fun. The time frames are insane. Like, if you miss a time frame, like something's due by 5 one day.
It's breach of contract and there's all kinds of legal
time
ramifications.
is of the essence, right? So if you make one mistake, forget one thing out of the 20 you're supposed to do, the client could lose a deposit. Like there's no fixing that, right? You can't go, oh, whoops, I missed a time frame. I'll just send it now.
Yeah.
There's no fixing it. It's just better call your insurer. So that kind of time pressure and that sort of stress does wear people out way quicker in conveyancing and property law than does other areas that don't have those time frames.
Do you feel like you're passionate about this particular reason, or like why did you sort of take on this area, and do you still find it like interesting?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So rewinding back to like 2012, 2013, there was bugger all jobs for lawyers.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. There was like next level no jobs for lawyers, right? And when I finished uni, I was doing a bit of work experience here, a bit of work experience there. Couldn't get a job anywhere. Actually applied to join the police.
Oh wow.
Just because I needed to get a job that was something to do with the law.
Yeah.
Something, I ended up, I had an operation on my foot years and years earlier, and the police employment people wanted to basically get the orthopedic surgeon that did the operation on me 3 or 4 years earlier to write a report. And the waiting time for this guy was literally like 2 years waiting time to get a private report done. So that
Yeah. Straight out.
everything happens for a reason, right?
Yeah.
And then I think I just ended up applying for like 20 different firms at the time. I actually have a folder. I have all the letters still.
Yeah.
Of all the letters I sent to all the different firms asking for a job.
Yeah.
And then, I ended up getting a job at a small firm called Property Law Solutions.
Yeah.
And a gentleman there, his name was Ranjit Singh, who I ended up working for nearly 10 years.
Yeah.
And he was known as, or he still is, a great property lawyer. And I just learned about property law from him. And his firm was very specialised in just doing resi conveyancing. And I, up until this point in time, had never thought, I'll just do conveyancing.
Yeah.
As it turns out, it's sort of a rite of passage for all lawyers. At least it was back then.
Yeah.
That, in terms of your knowledge, you don't really know anything. So you'll get thrown into a procedural sort of process of law, and conveyancing is mostly that 99% of the time.
Yeah.
And so, I just ended up being thrown in that. I had no idea what I was doing. And it was a sink or swim sort of scenario back then. So it was like, oh, here's 30 conveyances, go. Oh, but hang on a minute, I don't know how to do a conveyance. Yep, here's the manual. Here's the manual, work it out.
Figure it out, yeah.
Yes, I feel like if you do that now, it's probably against some sort of fair work.
Yeah.
It's bullying. Just learned very quickly how it all works. And it was a different time back then as well. There was less IT and everything was more manual. So you had to pick up the phone. Email was only really starting to be the main way. We still had a fax machine. And we would still send faxes every day for important notices under the contract. Yeah. That's only gone away in the last few years.
Yeah.
It was just property law to start off with. That was what I was thrown into. Ended up becoming, I thought, like decent good at it. And the thing I liked about it most was you had so many different clients and everything was so pick up the phone and talk to people. There was like a huge amount of client contact. Huge amount.
Yeah.
Okay.
With clients, real estate agents, bankers, brokers, like you name it. There was just like so many people, so many contacts. And if you do a good job, you just end up building rapport and relationships with all these people, hundreds.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's probably helped my firm grow so quickly is that when I left the other firm and started my own, although for probably that 2-year period, or I was actually there for 3 or 4 years, that I really didn't have much to do with the local market for property law. Yeah. I had been doing it long enough that I had a profile, and people knew, and the real estate agents knew who I was, and that I had done some good work for them in the past. Yeah. So then when I left and started, and said, and I called them, said, hey, I'm just starting my own practice. This is what I'm doing. Yeah. It's back to the good old days. They were like, oh, I can't believe it. Thank God. We've always waited for this day. We're going to support you as much as we can. Yeah. And there's agents out there who have sent me 100% of their staff ever since. Yeah. Just because they like to see people, like young local people having a crack. Yeah. How often does that happen?
No, exactly.
And in fact, there's another lawyer in Cairns, around the same age as me, who's starting his own practice doing property law. And I support him as much as I can. I send him work, and we try and send each other work.
Awesome.
Because it's hard to get started, sometimes. But you just got to support as much as your local profession as you can.
It's beneficial for everyone because it's raising the bar. It's raising the quality of work, the type of work that's going to be accomplished. So it is a win-win. The way you're describing it sounds like there genuinely is enough to go around, which is amazing. Obviously, we've seen like this big kind of this really quick expansion in like real estate and that whole space there. How has that like affected your business and the growth of it?
People often say, does your conveyancing practice and your business grow with the market or shrink with the market? I think it can if you weren't doing much work. Yeah. But it's basically if you have a decent sized market share, when the market's great, people are buying property and selling property. When the market's crap, people are still buying and selling property. They're under financial under financial pressure. They've got domestic relationship issues that force them to sell or move, or
it's always going to be there.
There's always going to be work there. It doesn't matter whether it's good times or bad times. And if you have enough of the market share and enough sort of word of mouth, good press, good Google reviews, you'll still be able to generate the work regardless. So I don't really worry too much about GFCs, although obviously history repeats. There was some hard times for law firms during the GFC, and a little bit earlier than that too. There was this huge boom in the early 2000s where, especially in Cairns, there was like something like 4,000 unit transactions occurred, brand new units. When Headley built all those units, everything on the Esplanade, that all happened. And there was only a very few law firms back then. You know what I mean? So a lot of people made a lot of money in those days. And then so far, obviously, the transaction numbers have been pretty stable since then. So
you mentioned before just the amount of, if you could stay at your desk for 11, 12 hours a day if Morgan didn't tell you to move. Do you think there's a potential concern and shelf life that you can only run that pace for so long? And you said, conveyancing is like, it's almost like a churn type role, and it's the pressures of timelines and everything like that. Do you think it's like a sustainable model for you personally to keep running at such a pace? Is it something that you think you're up to, or do you think there's got to be some different business practices here that I need to put in place so I don't burn out?
I'd be naive to think that I'm immune from burnout. Just because I've been immune to it for many, many years and have outcompeted a lot of my colleagues doesn't necessarily mean that I can cope with it moving forward long term. And I can already see just in the like at least in the last month or so, like we've hired a heap of new people. We're doing a lot of training. We've also had a lot of people on holidays and bits and pieces. Like there's been some resource strain on us, and hence probably it's end of financial year as well. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
But working those sort of hours is not conducive to happy life, happy family.
Yeah.
Possibly starting a family, trying to have a holiday, all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
I'd already resolved to sort of not pursuing those endeavors for the first 2 or 3 years, but making sure that I make the promise to myself that I'm happy to make less money and work slightly less to hire more people to try and capture that 20% back to bring it back into balance. I just got to make sure I don't get greedy. That's the main thing, I could go back to work right now and I could bill till midnight if I really want to. It's there in my inbox,
Waiting to go.
but I also need to sleep.
Yeah.
I don't want to go back.
Yeah.
I'll go back in the morning. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. So yeah, there's 2 things that keep me up at night. Is that it gets too big, and I just can't cope with it anymore.
Yeah.
So things I've tried to do to mitigate that. I've obviously had another lawyer just start, and probably the biggest change for me is I've basically got a new partner coming on board in the next 2 weeks. His name's Joshua Auld. He's been a lifelong friend of mine actually. And he does wills and estates and litigation. So completely different area of law, very complementary, doesn't compete with my existing practice. Yeah. And he's going to run his own business as a director basically in my firm. And then eventually we'll have some model or have some sort of way that, we'll change the name, and that's very exciting for me.
Yeah.
What it means from in terms of what we're just talking about is that there's another person who is, very senior director level like myself, who, if something happens to me, so say, got to have a car accident one morning and, I can't be on the phone for 6 hours, the business doesn't stop.
Yeah.
There's someone else who can make very important decisions or sign a trust check, sign something important, make a decision if I can't make that decision. And likewise for him, if he was thinking about starting his own practice, he'd have the same issues very quickly that I have now.
Yeah.
But by doing it this way, he has all the advantages, and he also has the same thing. If he's sick or something happens to him or whatever the case may be, I know enough about wills and estates and litigation to cover it for a day.
At least 24 hours.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so I just got to make sure I have enough stopgap of people who know enough to. No one's ever going to be able to replace me. I've realised that. And that was one of the things I contemplated a lot when I was leaving and starting my own firm is that, hey, staffing and resourcing can be your biggest issue moving forward forever. Yeah. You'll never find someone to replace you. Like, you'll never have this residual income where you don't work and you just make money. That just doesn't happen. You'll be on the tools.
Yeah.
And sure enough, 2 years later, I've never been more on the tools than I've ever been ever. But I'm enjoying it more than I ever have. That's for sure.
On that topic of transitioning from employee to employer, I want to know about what that mindset was, because there's a million people that go up the corporate ranks in big national firms like you were part of for years, and you were quickly rising to the top of that corporate hierarchy. You were then dangled, lots of money to just keep going, but you took the risk to go, you know what, I'm going to just, that pathway is secure for me. It's secure for my family. I'm going to throw it all away, start at ground zero, and just give it a punt. Was there fear and trepidation, or were you excited by the opportunity to actually have so much vulnerability in your income and stuff?
Yeah, it's definitely the second one. I'm very much open to whatever happens, and mate, I was ready to take whatever came. You know what I mean? If for example, it didn't work out in a few months' time and I had to find another job, I was willing to do that. Yeah. It just is what it is. You know what I mean?
Well,
so that's fine. I guess from a technical point of view, although I wasn't on the tools as much in my previous job, I still kept up the skills as a lawyer to do those bits and pieces that I do even now. Like the little admin bits, I still had a pretty good working knowledge of how they work, even though I hadn't done them as my job role for a long time. Because you got to remember, sort of at a certain point when you're, in a big sort of profit-making machine, there's levels of task you're just purely not allowed to do based on your hourly rate. Yeah. Like when they can pay someone 100 who's on it, they charge out it's 180 an hour to do this brief or send this email, do this thing. no client wants to pay $450 or $500 an hour for me to do the exact same thing. I'll do it better. Don't get me wrong. 100% I'll do it better. But it just doesn't economically make sense.
Yeah.
So that's probably the difference now, because I'm doing all those things, but I don't charge hourly rates.
Yeah.
That's probably where the model sort of changes for me.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
like charging per the job.
charging for the job. It's just everything I do is nearly everything is fixed fee.
Yeah. Wow.
Because I know the job and what's involved so well. I can scope out very easily and fix fee it for clients, so they know exactly how much things are going to cost, and I know how much fuck around there is for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes like it can range 10-20% of fuck around time, but that's also countered by the ones that are very easy and
it all washes out.
that's fine.
Yeah.
And
It'll wash
it's
out.
fine to still charge for the same amount of time, even if it takes you less, because the only reason it took me less time is because I've done it 15,000
Yeah,
times.
yeah.
No
They're
one
paying
else,
for the
no one else can
expertise.
do that.
And that's what they're getting to when they're paying for someone that is in that niche or is specialized, rather than when it being a branch of a bigger kind of corporation. So you're paying for that expertise and that specialization.
Yes, that's
as
right.
well.
And they're happy for me to do it because they know me and they sort of know my experience level and sort of what I've done before. Whereas if you in bigger firms where you're like, oh, I'm just going to send this part of the job to this other person, but you've never met or heard of that other person before.
Yeah.
You know, sort of just makes it less
difficult.
less of experience. Yeah.
Before you spoke about obviously like your wife Morgan, so she works within the business, and prior to that was she working in different field, different industry?
It was different. Yeah. So she worked at a local builder and she was
Yeah.
doing like the reception and admin, and she was there for 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
She was really good at her role there. She
Yeah.
really enjoyed the job. So when I came home one day, I said, "Hey, I think I'm going to quit my job."
Yeah.
She was like, "You think you're what?"
Are you comfortable with life? I'm going to turn up.
Yeah. And actually, like at the same time this is all going down, about 2 years earlier, we had signed a contract. We bought some land and signed a contract to build a house, and there was huge delays and cost escalations with this house. Interest rates had gone from 2% to like 6%. So our we were paying repayments on this house and land that it ended up taking 3 years to build. Not the builder's fault, not anyone's fault, just a combination of materials,
Supply issues.
supply,
Yeah.
all those things. Also built on a hill, so that's completely my fault. So it's not like we had zero financial risk in taking this path, right? Yeah. So I think that was probably her number one concern when I first came home was, what happens? Like, how are we going to do these things if it goes wrong? And I said, I don't know is the answer, but I can't keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I do know that for a fact. Oh, is there anyone else you can work for in Cairns? Well, not really. You know what I mean?
Because you're going to be in the same
I was
position
at
again.
a level where it was too difficult. I'd have to join as a partner of someone, and they're not going to join a partner they don't really know.
Yeah.
So, I sort of didn't really have any option but to start my own or change job completely.
Just complete industry change.
For sure. And, I got to say that she's worked as hard as me, the same hours, day in, day out for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And I couldn't have done it without her. So when sometimes people come to me and say, I really want to start my own firm as well, see what you've done. I want to replicate
Do you have
that.
a kick-ass wife?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, pretty much.
Do it.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Or
Shout out Morgan.
Yeah.
Shout out Morgan.
Yeah. Or at least like a wife who can leave and join what you're doing full time, and has can do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
Like it's no
Skills
use.
that
It's no
transfer
use if
over.
your spouse is like in medical or something and is a doctor and that's their career. You're not going to pull someone out of their own career.
Yeah.
To follow yours. So. And I think for Morgan, I don't want to speak for her because she'll end up watching this.
Yeah.
But I think she was at a point at her job where she probably capped out at seniority and skill and training and all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
She was just admin. But I knew, and I mean, half the reason, we obviously had very different job levels when we first met, 3 or 4 years ago. We've been married 2 years.
Yeah.
But she was I obviously knew and sense that she was very intellectual to even engage in relationship. You know what I mean? If that makes sense, right? You got.
Yeah.
You guys know what I'm saying, right? You got to be on the same level.
Yeah.
You got to be something level. So she was always on my level anyway. She just had a shit job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she knew that, and she always wanted to do more, move, or do something. She just didn't know what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I said, hey, let's just try this for 6 months. If you don't like it, I feel like I'll be able to find an admin person to do it, and you can follow your dreams, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Perfect. And we just... I don't know. She ended up just becoming the best conveyancer in the world.
Oh, no,
Yeah. And
Taught by the
yeah,
best.
forged in fire. But like basically what ended up happening was, and I've worked with a lot of people in 12 years in conveyancing, like maybe like 30 people I've worked with who do conveyancing, and she is the number one person I've ever worked with.
Yeah.
No degree, no training in conveyancing, no nothing, but she just picked it up so quickly, and her ability to get on the phone and build rapport with people, and just like I think she just heard me on the phone so much, and she's just like sometimes I hear her do like a full 2-minute speech, like to give a client a quote. And it's word for word my exact quote. And I like come open the door and be like,
No.
was that my speech? She's like, yeah, I've been listening to you. And it was literally perfect.
You're probably saying it in your sleep and just going in their breath.
Is that Martin Luther King Jr. You just got? Damn.
Yes. So anyway, like, I mean, I've always been really good at the technical abilities and the law. I'm not very good at organisation, right?
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason I like being paperless is if I don't be paperless, everything's everywhere. So she looks after all the calendars, the times, the trust accounting, appointments, all those dates that you could miss. Every morning she comes in, first thing she does is get the calendar, emails all the people a reminder for the shit at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, awesome.
Like no other law firms do that.
Yeah.
They don't care enough to ask someone about a cooling off. Like, oh, hey, just a reminder, your cooling off is tomorrow.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk about it or you want to know what that's about or you want to terminate, you need to let us know.
So basically, next time we want part 2 with James, go through Morgan.
Yeah, for sure. But these are the type of things that no one else that I know of was really doing. Like, oh, hey, just reminder your deposit's due tomorrow. If you don't pay that, there's some consequences you should know about.
Yeah.
But the front end, people don't really care about the front end of conveyancing. They only care about the back end and making sure they get the money right. Fair enough. That's important too. But that front end is the only bit the clients remember.
Yeah.
You know, they don't really know about the nitty-gritty stuff you do behind the scenes. All they know about is that you're on top of the dates, you reminded them, you explained things to them, and when they had questions, you picked up the phone and answered them.
Yeah. It's like a flawless
That's right.
experience.
So in our model of how we do it without giving away the trade secrets, I'm very much front end of the whole process, right? So Morgan and I look after the clients from when the clients need early advice to doing, you know, the building and pest and the finance and all those things that are the touchy-feely bits. And then we have other people in our office who look after the back-end bits where you just still have to interact with the client and send them things and ask for things to be signed and bits and pieces. But by then, everything's locked in. You know, it's pretty much all good. And the people that we have doing those roles love doing that side of it. You know what I mean? They would much prefer to do that than the front end, if it makes sense. So you've got to find the right people who do the bits and enjoy doing those bits and getting really, really good at it. So that's the challenge, building a team, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just luckily started with the best 2-person team ever.
Yeah.
And just slowly, as our need grew, sort of built that up, you know what I mean?
Building off that, you've obviously worked in workplaces where you felt like you didn't really have the best experience. Have you gone about being like a leader and a boss where you actually get to build this workplace now and actually make sure people actually want to stay around?
I would say I'm a completely different person than what I was, say,
really?
5 years ago. So at my old job, I used to have like a bar fridge and a microwave in the corner of my office. Worst leadership decision ever, right? But in my mind, I was like quarantined in my office trying to do the work I was supposed to do. And there was nothing worse than there's only one microwave in this office and there was 20 people.
Yeah.
So, and there was only a 1 hour lunch window, right? So for everyone to heat up their food for 5 minutes, there just wasn't enough time in the day. So I thought, I'll just get my own microwave. Oh, I'll just get my own fridge. And then ended up like never leaving my office. So it's probably the same culture I have now about not leaving my desk. I probably already had that. But the damage that I was doing that I didn't realize was not building the rapport and socializing with the people who were in my team and I was supposed to be who would look to me for leadership and look to me for guidance. And I just wasn't interacting with these people on any level other than, hey, have you done that job? Oh, can you do it? Or no, why not?
You like forget who's there. Like
completely forget. But there was no reason for me to be a leader. You know? There's no reason. You know? For me now, it's so different. Like if everyone just got up and left, that would be the end. It'd be the end. It really would. You know what I mean? So I think it's changing. It's changing my mentality to. I need all these people way more than they need me. You know what I mean? So I'll go out of my way and do everything possible to make as many people who in my workplace happy. You know what I mean? So back in the old place, oh my God, the person's not here at 8:30, and then they come in and be like, oh, like be a bit of a dickhead about it. You know what I mean? Fuck, do you think I care about that now? No. I say to anyone who works with me, they know very clearly that I don't care like how or where the job gets done or when, as long as it gets done and the clients are happy. I only have 2 metrics. Yeah. The 2 metrics are client happy, work done.
Yeah.
That's fine. If you want to be 5 minutes late or work 5 minutes later or take 2 hours for lunch, none of that really matters to me.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I'm too busy to even police it anyway.
Yeah.
But you got to give people that autonomy. You know, people got to feel like they have the ability to run their own show.
Yeah. And it's so often like with that mindset, like people and bosses and businesses go so far away from it because they just have this deep distrust that people are going to misuse it. But if you're bringing in the right people and you give them that autonomy and flexibility, 9 times out of 10 they respect it, and you get so much more out of them with the carrot rather than the stick. And it's just this old mindset that is like these old businesses that they just can't get it through their head. It's not until obviously these new kind of entrepreneurs come through and really push that through.
Yeah, but I don't know when I picked all these things up, but I definitely know I didn't have them as little as 3 years ago.
Yeah, is there anyone you look to, like,
I was just gonna ask the same question,
for like mentorship or like learning, or
No, honestly,
really,
I don't listen to any podcasts except yours.
Oh yeah,
Correct
Plug.
answer.
Well, I do, but no external stuff. I don't
no
know.
like
Just don't have the
reading,
time.
no,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
no like $10,000 courses.
No.
See, it's so funny. It's such a stark contrast to like we consume as much content from like our chosen content creators as possible, podcasts, books and everything, trying to hack productivity, trying to hack discipline or whatever. You've just raw dogged it. You've just gone like new business, 1 foot over the next. I've hired someone. Therefore, I now have to incorporate HR. Now that I've got 5 people, I'm creating a culture. So I have to become a leader.
Yeah.
Like you're just doing it on the fly. Where do you think this is coming from?
Oh, it just
You have to.
you just have to.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you're looking off my website. For 3 weeks, I've tried to write the content and the bios to send to you to finish the job.
Yeah,
I haven't done it.
yeah.
The main reason, and do you know what? It's been playing in my mind every day, every minute. I'm like, oh, that's definitely something I need to do.
And that's like sort of the conversation we had last week where we jumped on the phone and I was just like, look, I'll just do it. Like, so you don't have to deal
like
with
the
it.
reason for that is, and then I've got a whole list of admin stuff that I should have done by now that I haven't done, but none of it prioritizes higher than the client work or the client phone calls.
Yeah.
And because I'm 120% doing that stuff, there's just zero time. And then, you know, by the time I get home, like 6:30, 7:30, make dinner, the few hours that I have, and this is something that no one else probably does, is everyone plays video games. But so one thing that's different about the type of video games I play is I don't play any games by myself. No solo games, no RPG, no story line, anything like that. All I do is play like multiplayer games with my 2 brothers. My 2 younger brothers. They're in their 20s. You know what I mean? And that's what we do. And we just get on Discord on the headphones, you know, and then we just play games, talk shit, and have just a great time. Until my wife's like, I'm going to bed, bye. I'm like, yeah, bye. All right. See you in a few hours. And there's some weeks that I'll do that now or hour and a half every night. And yeah, I could not do that. And I might, you know, watch some content or do some bits and pieces. But I don't know. It's just something about
that's your outlet.
That's the balance for me is like I've been playing the same things for 10 years and I still suck at it. But it's just fun. It's just fun and you know, just talk about how our days went with my brother. He's in real estate. He's in real estate, you know. So we sort of have some, you know,
Overlap.
consistent stuff that we can talk about.
How do you find obviously being in business with Morgan, things like that, being able to separate work from work? Like, does work come home with you?
Yeah, we have zero separation.
Yeah.
Our life, our relationship, our marriage, everything is our job.
How do you do that?
I don't know, actually.
It's another one of the things you just kind of stumble your way through.
Yeah. And to be honest, I'm much better at disconnecting than Morgan is. So even though I wouldn't say I don't think about work, but I don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Because for all the 10, 12 years I've been doing this job, there's always been shitty emails in my inbox that I have to address in the morning, and there's no point worrying about it the night before. Yeah. Morgan has never had that experience before, right? So for her, this is new. So I catch her checking emails 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night going, oh, look at this thing we got to do tomorrow. I'm like, hey, put the phone away. Like it's irrelevant. Yeah. Like it doesn't change. Like right now we're in a time zone that doesn't exist in the conveyancing world. it's after business hours. So nothing really happens now until 8:30 the next morning in back business hours again. So it's just trying to train ourselves out of, let's try and like have a break in an evening. Sometimes people call every now and again, or on the weekend maybe take 1 or 2 calls, but it's not intense.
Earlier you kind of touched on it, and we spoke about this when we were at that auction. It was kind of just about the morals and values and things like that. So what have you kind of done to like identify where your morals are, and like do you find it coming up regularly in your work where you're like, okay, this is probably like stepping a line, I'm going to try and tilt
Every
it this
day.
way?
Every day. Fortunately, the profession that I'm in aligns strictly with my personal morals and beliefs anyway, right?
Yeah.
So my personal rule is the right choice is always the right choice, right? The right choice is never the wrong choice. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. In the sense that sometimes you have to, even if people are referrers or friends or whatever, you're going to have to upset a few people to do your job properly.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen every day. Some lawyers make that their personal vendetta is to make as many people upset as possible because I'm a lawyer, I'm going to send nasty emails.
Yeah.
That's the complete opposite of me. So I will take the path of least resistance on everything at every point in time until there's no other option but to send a nasty email. And by nasty, it's assertive.
Yeah.
For me, nasty is assertive.
Yeah.
And I think that luckily, not luckily, we have a code. We have like a set of rules that you have to follow very strictly.
Yeah.
And even the smallest breach of those rules is really, really bad. And I would say there's a few bad eggs in the profession generally, like there is in every profession, and you just got to manage those. But those sort of risks come up every day,
Yeah.
Like something that happens very regularly is, you might have someone who wants to use you for a sale conveyance, and you've spoken to him last week and gave him some advice.
Yeah.
Then a buyer calls and says, "Oh, yeah, it's this address." And, it might have been 3 weeks ago, so the address is lost on you now.
Yeah.
And then you find out later that it's the same transaction. And you obviously can't do both, right? So then you have to pick a side.
Yeah.
And you have to say, hey, really sorry, I know I spoke to you yesterday, but I did speak to this person 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So that's who I have to act
gotta
for.
go with
But I'll make some
Yeah.
referrals for people to look after you who will be just as good as me.
Amazing.
It's
Yeah.
going to be fine.
Yeah.
So it's managing crossover, and that gets worse as I get more recommendations and more
Yeah.
referrals.
Have you had anything yet that really, like, you really sat there and you're like, this is ethically a difficult one? Like, I don't know how I'm going to go with it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about
No,
them
don't need
specifically, of
details,
course.
but-
But that just happens in the normal course.
And what do you do to move through that?
I normally sit back in my chair. I don't make a decision straight away. Sometimes just like nothing is really urgent, right?
Yeah.
Contractual dates are urgent,
Yeah.
but ethical decisions never urgent. Moral decisions, like you can definitely sit back for a few hours and have a think about something before you make a decision on it. There's hotlines and there's QLS, Law Society counsellors who will answer questions and take those calls. Our insurer is really, really good.
Yeah.
So up to before I started my own practice, I'd nearly never spoken to anyone from our insurance company. So in Queensland, there's one insurance company for lawyers. It's owned by the Law Society. It's called Lexon.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they do all the policies and all the risk management for all law firms in Queensland, except the big ones. They have a national insurer. And I've never really had anything to do with those guys at all up until now. They're so proactive with managing risk. Like we're always having workshops. They're always checking in. Every year when I renew my insurance, they go through it. And it's just been such a good experience. So,
Yeah, awesome.
There's so much support. I think that's the main thing, right? There's so much support for sole practitioners because it's so easy to fall into this trap that you've got no support or no one to talk to. And that's where people make poor decisions, right? Whether it's poor technical decisions, wrong advice, or poor moral, ethical decisions, it's because they probably didn't have the support network or someone to call.
needed.
That you could easily just pick up the phone to any other senior lawyer in Cairns and be like, hey, can I bounce something off you? This is what's happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that person will confidently and help you with it. There's no doubt about it. And I think that's really something really good about the Cairns profession is we are very collegiate. I think most people are. And maybe that's something that I'd lost in the 4 years I was working at a national law firm.
Yeah.
Because we were so sandbanked off from the rest of the profession. We were doing pretty much non-Cairns work in the corporate tower. And no one would really go to events like, young chamber events or bits and pieces. People sometimes do, but it's nowhere near the same participation as other firms and other, you know what I mean? So I think I felt I was losing my local identity.
Yeah.
Sense of community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, now I make an active effort at least once a week, I'll go, all right, who should I be catching up with? What other lawyers? Or even, if I see someone struggling, they're on my priority list to like touch base with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even if it's like not obvious, be like, oh, how's it all going?
It's fine.
Yeah.
How is it really?
It's fine, but you can tell who's struggling just from their emails or how long it takes them to get back to you and those sorts of things. It's
is
very
that
easy to tell.
like mortgage brokers, real estate agents, or lawyers?
I'm more attuned to it in lawyers.
Yeah.
Because I know what someone
What
not
the signs
struggling
are.
would be.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Where do you think that comes from then? Like wanting to have such a strong network or being able to give so much value to people then?
I honestly, I feel like this job is so hard.
Yeah.
Right. Like what we do is so difficult. And I've never been any other profession, right? So it's completely anecdotal.
Yeah.
But sometimes I think what we do, like being a lawyer is really, really hard, right? Being a property lawyer is even harder. Being a business owner and a property lawyer is even harder again.
Yeah.
The Australian government don't make it easier for people to be entrepreneurs. You know what I mean? Like the amount of tax and the amount of forms and the amount
tell
of
me about
stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yet 95% of businesses in Australia
I've got a
small
great
business.
accountant.
Yeah.
I've got a great accountant, and he looks after like pretty much 95% of things. But if I didn't have that, God, it'd be such a struggle. You know, and it makes you realize how people can fall behind on BAS and GST and PAYG and super and all these things.
Yeah.
Because every other day we're doing our own bookkeeping as well.
Yeah.
I don't think that's something we could really let go of because it's very sort of intricate to what we do, right? In our trust accounting and everything. But every other day that we have a weird question about what to do something on Xero, you know what I mean? We don't really have people to ask for that.
No.
So we just sort of manage it. Morgan and I will just sit there together and be like,
Let's figure it out.
just beat boop until something works.
To Reddit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I sort of look out or try to look out for people as much as possible because like if I'm struggling, there's got to be people struggling.
Yeah. It's going to come back around, I guess,
Yeah.
if you help them.
And I don't know if people reach out to me as much as I probably reach out to them in like thinking about it now.
Yeah.
And that's probably because they're just too busy to even think about it. Well, I think it's just obvious. A certain amount of growth in a small amount of time is a challenge.
Yeah.
And all the stress that comes with that.
Yes, that's right. One of the other things I do to manage that is I just sort of don't really have a uniform. Actually, my uniform is now shorts and Birks.
Yeah.
And I'm probably the new lawyer. And I swear, I see people around walking around in suits and stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe they got caught, maybe they don't. And I'm sure they like look at me and be like, oh, look at this guy just cruising around in shorts and Birks.
Yeah.
But mate, I've never had more like successful relations with clients in terms of like building rapport and being that guy than just dressing normally like they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I just can't believe it's not a thing.
Oh
Just to
man,
be
what
chill.
I would give to like get out of my RMs and just be in like comfortable clothes on my way to work.
Yeah. Well, what happens if you go to work? What's this uniform policy?
Yeah.
Like, what is this all about? Like, what are we trying to prove to
I can
people?
feel HR breathing down my neck.
Why?
Yeah, it's
I wear Birks at
terrible.
work.
Do you?
Yeah, I walk in with the RMs and client meetings with the RMs, but I'm immediately out.
dogs
And
out.
I'm socks and
Yeah,
Birks. Yeah, at work. Yeah.
Kick them off.
Get the dogs out. No one wants to see it, but I don't give a shit. Yeah.
For free? That's crazy.
Yeah.
We'll start a revolution.
I guess there's a lot of like social work norms that I sort of have found a lot of success in breaking.
Yeah.
And I don't even know why they existed in the first place.
Yeah.
But that's it. It's just like that, that questioning and that reasoning, and it's like, why do we do this? No,
Yeah.
fuck it off.
Yeah.
Like, get rid of it.
Yeah. And you
I
are
love
creating
that.
your own identity and community because I don't know any other lawyer who throws multiple parties.
Yeah.
You are
Yeah, when's the next one?
constantly on the parties. This budget for parties is bottomless,
10%.
which I
10%.
appreciate because you've hired me for like half a dozen gigs now, which I really
And I've
appreciate.
been well fed.
So I'm well fed
Yeah.
because of James.
We only do one. We're meant to do one every financial year for all the conveyances, right?
Yeah.
It just so happens that we did an office opening party for the agents 2 months before that, so it seemed like a big double up.
And
I
you
was aware of it.
sponsored the law ball, which I also played
Yes.
at.
Yeah.
Let's
And
just
the
keep
JC
rattling it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sponsorship thing's important to me. Like,
Yeah.
it's just like conveyancing barter card, really. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's not to me. It's like not when you sponsor something or donate. It's not real money. It's like money that I've exchanged my time for that I'm already sitting there doing. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it feels like I'm doing a lot of good. What feels like for free. for
Yeah.
me.
So is there anything in particular you sponsor, like mainly events
Yeah,
or like?
mainly FNQL. Like
the law events.
like
Yeah, okay.
JCU and CQ.
Yeah,
So,
a fair bit of that.
yeah, for sure,
cool.
for sure.
Like any podcasts or anything like that? No.
Had it in the repertoire.
Yeah, he's gonna get
check it out.
tax deductible status.
Yeah. One day.
But yeah, it's probably more so. I really just want to make sure that there's enough people doing law.
Yeah.
At uni. You know what I mean? Or they have questions, or they know what the real job's like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think,
I think it's so massive. All of us like stepping into our careers. I know like what I would have given to have someone from industry come to while I'm studying, being like, hey, this is what the professions actually look like. This are all the different generalist areas. This is the niche areas. Like, what do you think you'd be good at? Like, it just, you get into it kind of so blindly and you're like, oh, well, now I'm here. I'm going to have to do this job for the next 40 years of my life. And then you're just kind of stuck. So I love that. That's really awesome.
Yeah. So there's one coming up soon with JCU's legal sort of association where it's like a question and answers, and they've got a few different lawyers from different types of areas,
Yeah.
sort of just doing a Q&A as to what practice is like in sort of my specific scenario versus a bigger firm and those sorts of things. And it's actually quite symbiotic for me because I remember doing one literally, it would have been like 3 years ago, where I turned up in a suit and was like, ooh, national fun, so good, da da da. And like to completely flip that, like 180 degrees, be happier, financially better off, and like so much more enthusiastic about life. It's just like, it means I've actually made the right decision.
Yeah.
And I hope that transfers to some other people and go, you know what? Maybe starting my own firm and doing something is something I could do.
Yeah.
And I don't have to move to Brisbane to work in this
big corporate
machine thing where you have to do 11 billable hours.
What do you reckon the time was from when you opened the business to when you're like, okay, this was the right decision. This was the move.
And now,
I don't know.
Because you just said now that you're happy.
Yeah.
And like,
pretty much. I think maybe the first conveyancing party we did, right?
Yeah.
No, going back to the party thing.
There's a thing.
So okay, up to this point in time, right? No one in Cairns ever has just run like a drinks function for people doing conveyancing or other law firms, paid for it all, and just said, hey, come on a Friday afternoon, have a few drinks, have a cocktail, have some food, meet all the people that you email on a daily basis but have no idea who they are, and just like build some collegiate, some friendships or actually put a face to a name.
Yeah.
No one's ever done that before.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost me much. It costs me like $2,500. Like a fifth of that is you.
Yeah. And you get your money's worth.
So, and then what happened was at one of these parties, right? So there was two people talking and they're like, oh, hello, who are you? You know, where do you work? Da, da, da. They realized they knew each other and had spoken to each other for years. Were like, oh my God, and hugged, right? Ridiculous, right? And they were completely different demographics. And like the happiness that these people would experience right in front of me while I was sitting there with a margarita, I was like,
Arriba!
I have done this.
I just made this happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's sick.
And that's something I would never be able to do as an employee, you know, counting my dollars, you know, till the next pay increase of 2%. While you're, you know, working your ass off for the masters, you know what I mean? That sort of value you can't. I don't think you can bring to society. You're just a cog in it.
It's an incredible community you're building, James, and everyone's noticed, and everyone I've spoken to says, you know, the same things about you and how generous you and Morgan are to the law community. Where do you see you and Harding Property in 5 years?
Okay. Well, we'll be in the same building because we're
physically,
locked,
okay,
we're locked in the same building. Our building has enough room. I don't know how big this gets. I honestly, I don't think the choice is really mine, to be honest. I think it'll just keep organically growing. I would not like to see more than 10 people.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
I think there's a certain point in time where
you just become like the other firms.
Yeah,
and just,
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And we lose what makes us special.
Yeah.
And I'm happier to get to the point where we are still special.
Yeah.
And even if the fees go up 10%, 20%, and people are still happy, that's just where we'd be.
Yeah.
That's where we'd be. If we have to turn it away, I've turned it away. But there's no, I've seen it all before. I've seen law firms go 10, 20, shit, 10.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've never fired someone in my life. I never want to fire someone.
No, it's terrible.
I couldn't imagine the conversation.
Yeah. It's the worst.
Highest mark from the start.
Yeah, so hiring's a big deal. Just make sure I try and hire people who, you know, are never going to have to fire.
If they want to go, they want to go.
If they want to go, they want to go.
Yeah,
and I'll support anyone, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'll put their lives way ahead of my conveyancing practice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think that's probably where it goes. Is
Yeah.
a few more people. Now we have the systems and we have the people. Now we've got this 6 people to further build out our systems and our procedures and
Have the website soon. The AI
have the
built
website,
in.
have the website, and just sort of streamline what we're doing and try and buy back 5-10% of my life.
Yeah.
Far out, man. That's been amazing chat, honestly.
Yeah. So good, James.
I feel like I learned so much about you and like we've known each other for ages. So, yeah.
Once again, part 2, we'll run it back. Once it's back, we'll get into it. So obviously, massive thank you for coming. That was a really great time, really
personal
insightful.
story,
And we really look forward to seeing where you're going, the
Even more
success you
success and
achieve.
more parties.
Yeah, more parties.
Yeah.